Everyone thought I was just the help sweeping up shattered glass, but they had no idea I could buy and sell their entire bloodline before breakfast. My feet were throbbing inside these cheap black flats that felt like they were made of cardboard and malice. Being invisible was harder than it looked. You have to stand perfectly still while people discuss millions of dollars right in front of your face like you are a piece of furniture. That is the life of a waitress at the Obsidian Hotel. It is the most exclusive spot in Manhattan where a bottle of water costs more than my entire outfit, and the guests treat the staff like NPCs in a video game they are bored of playing. My name is Elowen, and for the past 3 weeks I have been pouring champagne for tech moguls and oil barons while they ignore my existence. I keep my head down. I say yes sir and right away ma'am. I scrub tables until my knuckles are raw. I take the trash out to the alley where the rats are the size of small dogs. I do it all without complaining because nobody here knows the truth. They do not know that the name on my name tag is fake. They do not know that my bank account has more zeros than they will ever see in a lifetime. And they definitely do not know that as of this morning I legally own 51% of this entire hotel chain. I wanted to see how the management treated their people before I announced the takeover. I wanted to see the rot from the inside out. And man was it rotten. The worst of the bunch was Sterling Cross. Sterling was the current owner and the face of the brand. He was tall and handsome in that plastic-manufactured way rich guys get when they spend too much time in tanning beds and not enough time in reality. He walked around the Obsidian like he was a god descending from Olympus to bless us peasants with his cologne which smelled like burning money and ego. Everyone thought I was just the help sweeping up shattered glass, but they had no idea I could buy and sell their entire bloodline before breakfast. My feet were throbbing inside these cheap black flats that felt like they were made of cardboard and malice. Being invisible was harder than it looked. You have to stand perfectly still while people discuss millions of dollars right in front of your face like you are a piece of furniture. That is the life of a waitress at the Obsidian Hotel. It is the most exclusive spot in Manhattan where a bottle of water costs more than my entire outfit, and the guests treat the staff like NPCs in a video game they are bored of playing. My name is Elowen, and for the past 3 weeks I have been pouring champagne for tech moguls and oil barons while they ignore my existence. I keep my head down. I say yes sir and right away ma'am. I scrub tables until my knuckles are raw. I take the trash out to the alley where the rats are the size of small dogs. I do it all without complaining because nobody here knows the truth. They do not know that the name on my name tag is fake. They do not know that my bank account has more zeros than they will ever see in a lifetime. And they definitely do not know that as of this morning I legally own 51% of this entire hotel chain. I wanted to see how the management treated their people before I announced the takeover. I wanted to see the rot from the inside out. And man was it rotten. The worst of the bunch was Sterling Cross. Sterling was the current owner and the face of the brand. He was tall and handsome in that plastic-manufactured way rich guys get when they spend too much time in tanning beds and not enough time in reality. He walked around the Obsidian like he was a god descending from Olympus to bless us peasants with his cologne which smelled like burning money and ego. He had inherited the hotel from his father, and he was running it into the ground while pretending he was a business genius. Tonight was the breaking point. It was the annual Emerald Gala. Every A-lister in the city was packed into the grand ballroom. The chandeliers were dripping with crystals and the tables were set with silverware that cost more than a car. The air smelled like lobster bisque and expensive perfume. I was assigned to the VIP section, which meant I was assigned to Sterling Cross. My manager Marcus grabbed my arm before I went out onto the floor. Marcus was a sweaty, nervous man who looked like he was constantly about to have a heart attack. He squeezed my arm way too hard. Listen to me, Elowen, Marcus hissed, his eyes darting around like he was scared Sterling would pop out of the walls. Mr. Cross is in a mood tonight. His stock dropped 3 points and he is looking for a punching bag. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak unless spoken to. Just keep his glass full and stay out of his sunlight. You mess this up and you are done. You hear me? You will be back to flipping burgers. I pulled my arm away and fixed my uniform. It was an itchy black polyester dress that fit poorly. I hated it. I hear you, Marcus, I said, keeping my voice flat. I got this. You better, Marcus muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. He is on a warpath. I pushed through the double doors and the noise of the party hit me like a physical wave. Laughter and clinking glasses and a live jazz band playing in the corner. I navigated through the crowd with a tray of vintage scotch balancing on one hand. I saw Sterling immediately. He was sitting at the head table surrounded by a group of sycophants who were laughing way too hard at his jokes. He had his arm around a woman who looked like she would rather be anywhere else on earth. Sterling was drunk. I could tell by the way his face was flushed and his tie was slightly crooked. He was waving his hands around telling some story about a yacht trip in Ibiza. So I told the captain, if you do not get me more ice, I am going to buy this boat and sink it with you on it. Sterling shouted and slammed his hand on the table. The table shook. The people around him roared with laughter like it was the funniest thing they had ever heard. I felt a knot of disgust tighten in my stomach. This man was a clown. A dangerous, powerful clown. I approached the table silently. My job was to refill his scotch. I waited for a pause in the conversation because interrupting was a cardinal sin. Sterling stopped laughing and reached for his glass. It was empty. He frowned and looked around angrily. Where is the service in this dump? He snapped, snapping his fingers in the air. I am dry here. Who is supposed to be watching my glass? I stepped forward immediately. Right here, Mr. Cross, I said softly. I reached out to pour the amber liquid into his crystal tumbler. I was steady. My hands never shook. I was a professional even when I was playing a role. But Sterling was not steady. Just as I started to pour, he jerked his arm back to gesture at someone across the room. His elbow hit my forearm hard. The bottle slipped. It did not fall, but it tilted just enough. A splash of 18-year-old scotch flew out of the bottle and landed squarely on the sleeve of Sterling's light gray custom Italian suit. The entire table went silent. The jazz band seemed to stop playing. The laughter died instantly. It was like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the ballroom. I froze. I watched the dark stain spread on the expensive fabric. Sterling looked at his sleeve. Then he looked at the bottle in my hand. Then he looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with a cold, nasty rage that made my skin crawl. You stupid little idiot, he whispered, but in the silence it sounded like a scream. I set the bottle down on the table. I am so sorry, sir, I said, keeping my head bowed. You bumped my arm in it. Excuse me, Sterling interrupted, his voice rising. Did you just say I bumped you? Did you just blame me for your incompetence? He stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. He towered over me. I was 5'6" and he was over 6 feet, but I refused to shrink back. I refused to cower. I looked him in the chest because looking him in the eye would be seen as a challenge, and I was not ready to reveal myself yet. It was an accident, sir, I said calmly. Let me get some club soda and... Do not touch me, Sterling shouted. He grabbed a napkin and dabbed furiously at his sleeve, making it worse. You are worthless. You know that. You are absolute trash. Look at this suit. This suit costs more than your entire family makes in a decade. The guests were staring. People at the nearby tables had stopped eating. Phones were coming out. They were recording. Good. Let them record. Let the world see who Sterling Cross really is. I stood perfectly still. I did not apologize again. I did not beg. I just watched him unravel. You are fired, Sterling spat at me. Get out of my face. In fact, get out of my hotel. I want you on the street right now. No severance. No reference. You are nothing. You are a nobody. Marcus, the manager, came running over looking like he was going to pass out. Mr. Cross, I am so sorry, he stammered, grabbing my arm again. She is new. She is clumsy. I will remove her immediately. No, Sterling held up a hand. Not yet. She thinks she can ruin my night and just walk away. No way. Sterling reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. He peeled off a single $1 bill. He crumpled it up into a tight little ball. Here is your tip, he said with a cruel sneer. Pick it up. He threw the crumpled dollar bill on the floor. It landed near my shoe. Pick it up, he commanded. Since you like ruining things, maybe you can clean up the floor while you are at it. That is all you are good for, right? Cleaning up after your betters. The room was deadly quiet. This was not just firing someone. This was humiliation for sport. He wanted to break me. He wanted to see me cry. He wanted to see the poor waitress scramble on the floor for $1 because he thought that was all I was worth. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but not from fear. From anger. Pure cold anger. I looked at the crumpled dollar bill on the plush carpet. Then I looked up. For the first time I looked Sterling Cross directly in the eyes. He flinched. He probably expected to see tears. He expected to see a terrified girl begging for her job. Instead, he saw eyes that were dead flat and totally unafraid. "I'm not picking that up," I said. My voice was clear. It carried through the silent room. A gasp rippled through the crowd. "You did not say no to Sterling Cross." Sterling's face turned a deep shade of purple. "What did you say to me?" I said no, I repeated. I stepped away from Marcus's grip. "I am not picking it up. And I am not fired." Sterling laughed, but it sounded like a bark. "You are not fired. Who do you think you are talking to? I own this place. I own the ground you are standing on. I own the air you are breathing in this room. If I say you are fired, then you are gone." Security. 2 large guards in black suits started moving toward us from the perimeter. I did not flinch. I did not move. I just kept staring at him, memorizing every single line of arrogance on his face. "You are making a mistake, Sterling," I said. "I dropped this, sir." His jaw dropped. He looked like he had been slapped. "Get her out of here," he screamed. "Throw her in the alley with the rest of the garbage." The guards grabbed my arms. They were rough. They dragged me backward. I did not fight them. I did not make a scene. I let them pull me away from the table. As they dragged me out, I locked eyes with Sterling one last time. He was smirking. He thought he had one. He thought he had crushed another ant beneath his boot. He picked up his glass and signaled for a new bottle, completely dismissing me as if I had never existed. The guard shoved me out the back exit into the cold night air. I stumbled, but I caught my balance. The heavy metal door slammed shut behind me, locking me out. I stood in the alley next to the dumpsters. The smell of rotting food and old grease was overwhelming. My feet hurt. My uniform was itchy. I was fired. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then I reached into my apron pocket and pulled out my phone. It was a burner phone I used for the job, but I had one number saved on it that mattered. I dialed. It rang once before a voice picked up on the other end. "This is Vance Capital," the voice said. "It is me," I said. My voice changed. The humble waitress tone was gone. The submissive, fearful cadence vanished. In its place was the voice that had negotiated billion-dollar mergers and hostile takeovers in 3 different continents. Elowen, the voice on the other end, said, instantly shifting to alert. "Is everything okay?" "Everything is perfect," I said, staring at the steel door of the hotel. "Initiate the transfer. File the paperwork with the SEC tonight. I want the board meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8 sharp. "Did something happen?" the voice asked. "You could say that," I replied. "Sterling Cross just gave me a very clear demonstration of why. He is unfit to run a lemonade stand, let alone a global hospitality brand." "Understood. Do you want security detail to pick you up?" "No," I said. I walked toward the end of the alley where the streetlights of the city were glowing. "I'm going to take a cab home. I need to shower. I have a big day tomorrow." "What about Sterling?" the voice asked. "Should we notify him?" "No," I said, and a small cold smile touched my lips. "Let him sleep. Let him think he is the king of the world for one more night. I want to see his face when he walks into that boardroom tomorrow." I hung up the phone and tossed it into the dumpster. I walked out of the alley and hailed a cab. The driver looked at my waitress uniform and gave me a tired look. "Rough night?" he asked. "You have no idea," I said, getting in. "But it is about to get a whole lot better." I went back to my penthouse, which was only 6 blocks away but a frantic world apart from the life I had been living for 3 weeks. I stripped off the polyester uniform and threw it in the trash. I stood under the hottest shower I could handle, scrubbing the feeling of that place off my skin. I did not sleep much that night. I sat on my balcony wrapped in a silk robe, looking out at the city skyline. I could see the Obsidian Hotel from here. It stood tall and dark against the sky, a monument to Sterling's ego. He thought I was nobody. He thought I was just a pair of hands to pour his drink and a pair of ears to listen to his insults. He forgot the golden rule of business. Never underestimate the person in the room who is listening more than they are talking. He broke the social contract. He thought money gave him the right to treat people like dirt. Well, he was about to learn that there is always a bigger fish. And in this ocean I was the great white. Morning came fast. The sun rose over Manhattan, painting the glass skyscrapers in gold and orange. I dressed slowly. No polyester today. I put on a tailored navy blue power suit that cost $5,000. I put on my red bottom heels that clicked with authority on the marble floor. I pulled my hair back into a sleek, sharp bun. I put on my gold watch. I looked in the mirror. Elowen the waitress was gone. Elowen Vance, the CEO of Vance Capital, was back. I grabbed my briefcase and headed out the door. My driver was waiting downstairs with the black SUV. To the Obsidian, I said. We pulled up to the front entrance at 7:45. The doorman did not recognize me. He opened the door with a polite nod, completely unaware that I was the same girl who had taken his trash bags out the day before. I walked into the lobby. The morning shift was starting. I saw Marcus, the manager, near the front desk yelling at a bellhop. He looked stressed. When he saw me walking in, he did a double take. He squinted. He recognized the face, but the clothes threw him off. He started to walk toward me looking confused. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice uncertain. "Can I help you?" I did not stop walking. "Good morning, Marcus," I said, breezing past him. He froze. He knew that voice. But before he could put it together, I was already at the elevators. I pressed the button for the penthouse floor. The executive boardroom. I walked into the boardroom at 7:55. The entire board of directors was already there. They were sitting around the long mahogany table, murmuring nervously. They had all received the emergency notification last night. They knew the company had been bought out. They just did not know by whom. When I walked in, the room went silent. I walked to the head of the table. The chair was empty. It was Sterling's chair. I pulled it out and sat down. "Who are you?" one of the old board members asked, adjusting his glasses. "This meeting is for shareholders only." "I am the shareholder," I said, placing my briefcase on the table. "I am Vance Capital." Gasps went around the room. They knew the name. Everyone knew Vance Capital. They just did not know the face behind it. "Where is Sterling?" someone whispered. "Speak of the devil." The doors slammed open. Sterling strode in looking like a wreck. He was wearing sunglasses indoors and he looked hungover. He was not wearing a tie. He held a coffee cup in one hand and he looked furious. "What is the meaning of this?" he shouted, taking off his sunglasses. "Why was a meeting called without my authorization? Who called this meeting?" He looked around the room, his eyes scanning the faces of the board members. They were all looking at me. Sterling followed their gaze. He looked at the head of the table. He looked at me. For a second there was zero recognition. He just saw a woman in a suit sitting in his chair. "Excuse me," he snapped, walking toward me. "You are in my seat. Get up." I did not move. I leaned back, interlacing my fingers. "I do not think I am," I said. Sterling stopped. He squinted. He tilted his head. The hangover was slowing his brain down, but the gears were starting to turn. He looked at my face. He looked at my eyes. The same flat, unafraid eyes he had seen last night. His face went pale. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He dropped his coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, splashing hot coffee on his shoes. "You," he whispered. "The waitress." "Hello, Sterling," I said coolly. "This is a joke," he stammered, looking at the board members. "Is this a prank? Why is the waitress sitting in the chairman's seat? Marcus fired her last night. Security, get her out of here." Nobody moved. The board members were looking down at their papers or looking at me with new respect. "Security is not coming, Sterling," I said. "Because security works for me now." "That is impossible." Sterling laughed, a desperate high-pitched sound. "You are a waitress. You spill drinks. You beg for tips. You are nothing." I stood up. I placed my hands flat on the table. "I am Elowen Vance," I said, my voice filling the room. "I am the CEO of Vance Capital. And as of last night, I own 51% of Cross Hotels." Sterling staggered back like he had been punched. "No," he muttered. "No. Vance Capital is a ghost firm. Nobody knows who runs it." "You do now," I said. I picked up a file folder from the table and slid it down the long mahogany surface. It stopped right at the edge where Sterling was standing. "What is this?" he asked, his hands shaking. "That is your severance package," I said. Sterling looked at the file, then back at me. "You can't fire me. I am the owner. My name is on the building." "Your name is on the building for now," I corrected him. "But we will be rebranding. As for ownership, you are now a minority shareholder with 0 voting rights. And according to the morality clause in the company bylaws, which I read very carefully, any executive who causes public embarrassment to the brand can be removed immediately for cause." I paused, letting the word sink in. "Public embarrassment," Sterling sputtered. I have not done anything. I pulled a remote out of my pocket and pointed it at the large screen on the wall behind me. Let's go to the tape, I said. The screen flickered to life. It was a video from last night. Someone at the party had recorded the whole thing. It showed Sterling drunk screaming at me, throwing the dollar bill on the floor, calling me trash. The audio was crisp. The board members looked away in shame. It was ugly. It was indefensible. That video has 2 million views this morning, I said. The hashtag boycott Obsidian is trending #1 globally. You are a liability, Sterling. Sterling looked at the screen, then at me. He looked small. The arrogance was gone, replaced by pure panic. Look, he said, his voice trembling. We can work this out. I was drunk. It was a mistake. I did not know who you were. And that is the problem, I said, cutting him off. If you had known I was a billionaire, you would have treated me with respect. But because you thought I was a nobody, you treated me like garbage. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. And I do not do business with people who lack character. I pointed to the door. Get out of my hotel, Sterling. He looked around the room for help. Not a single person met his eyes. He was alone. Truly alone. He grabbed the file folder and turned around. He walked to the door, his shoulders slumped, his expensive shoes crunching on the shards of the coffee cup he had dropped. He looked like a beaten dog. When the door clicked shut, the room was silent again. I sat back down in the leather chair. It was comfortable. I looked at the board members. They were terrified. They were wondering if they were next. Now, I said, opening my portfolio. Let's discuss the cleaning staff wages. They are criminally low, and that is going to change today. I spent the next 4 hours tearing the company apart and rebuilding it. I fired the managers who enabled Sterling. I promoted the staff who actually did the work. I gave Marcus a heart attack and then a raise on the condition that he grew a spine. By noon, I was exhausted but satisfied. I walked out of the conference room and headed toward the lobby. I needed coffee. Real coffee, not the boardroom sludge. I walked to the hotel cafe. The barista was a girl named Jenny. I had worked with her for 3 weeks. She was sweet and she was studying nursing at night. When she saw me approach, she froze. She had heard the news. Everyone had heard the news. The gossip mill moves faster than fiber optics. She looked at my suit. She looked at my face. She looked terrified. Miss Vance, she stammered. I mean, ma'am. I smiled. It was a genuine smile. Just a Elowen, Jenny, I said. Can I get a medium latte with oat milk? And hey. She blinked. Yes. I saw you studying those anatomy textbooks in the break room, I said. The company is going to start a tuition reimbursement program for employees next month. You should apply. Jenny's jaw dropped. Really? Really, I said. Now about that coffee. She rushed to make it. I stood there waiting, watching the lobby. The vibe was different already. The fear was gone. The staff walked with their heads up. The air felt lighter. I took my coffee and walked toward the exit. I stepped out into the bright Manhattan afternoon. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my VP. Sterling is calling. He wants to know if he can keep his company car. I laughed out loud. Tell him he can keep the car, I typed back. But he has to come pick up the keys from me personally. And tell him to bring a vacuum. I might have spilled some sugar in the lobby. I put my phone away and walked down the street. The city was loud and chaotic and beautiful. I blended into the crowd. Just another woman in a suit. Just another face in the masses. But I knew the truth. And now so did they. You never know who you are talking to. So you better be nice. Because the person pouring your water might just own the ocean. 2 weeks later, the internet was still on fire. Sterling Cross did not go quietly into the night. Like I expected, he went on a media tour that would have been impressive if it wasn't so pathetic. He went on every podcast and talk show that would have him. He spun a wild narrative where he was the victim of a corporate shark who deceived him. He called me a liar. He called me a snake. He told the world that I had tricked him into signing over the company while he was under duress. He was fighting for his life in the court of public opinion because he knew he had already lost in the court of law. I sat in my office, which used to be his office, watching him on a massive flat-screen TV. He was on a morning news show, sweating under the stage lights, wearing a suit that looked a little too big for him now that his confidence had shrunk. She is a predator, Sterling told the host, leaning forward with fake tears in his eyes. She infiltrated my staff. She spied on me. It is corporate espionage. I am suing to get my family legacy back. The Obsidian is mine. I turned the TV off. The room went silent. Marcus stood by the door holding a tablet. He looked different these days. He stood straighter. He had lost the nervous sweat. Do you want me to release a statement? Marcus asked. No, I said, spinning my chair around to face the window. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. Let him talk. Let him dig the hole deeper. But the investors are getting nervous, Marcus said. They do not like the drama. They want to know if he has a case. He has nothing, I said, standing up. But if he wants a show, we will give him a finale. Is everything ready for the relaunch gala tonight? Yes, Marcus nodded. The guest list is finalized. Security is tight. The new signage is up. Good, I said. Tonight we bury the old Obsidian. And if Sterling is as predictable as I think he is, he will try to crash the party. I want him to. The night of the gala arrived and the hotel looked like a diamond rising from the ashes. I had spent millions renovating the lobby in record time. We stripped away the dark, moody, pretentious vibe Sterling loved and replaced it with light. White marble, gold accents, and massive floor-to-ceiling windows that let the city in. We invited everyone. Not just the billionaires and the celebrities, but the community leaders, the local business owners, and yes, the staff. Every employee was allowed to bring a guest. For the first time, the people serving the food were dining alongside the people eating it. I wore a gown that was pure silver. It shimmered like liquid metal when I moved. I wanted to look like a blade. Sharp, beautiful, and dangerous. The ballroom was packed. The jazz band was playing, but this time the atmosphere was different. It wasn't stiff. It was alive. People were actually laughing, not just performing happiness. I was circulating the room, shaking hands, when I felt a shift in the air. The temperature seemed to drop. The chatter near the entrance died down. I turned around. Sterling Cross had arrived. He pushed past the security guards at the door. He looked manic. His hair was messy, his eyes were wild, and he was holding a stack of papers in his hand. He marched into the center of the room like he owned the place. Stop the music, he screamed. The band faltered and stopped. The room went deadly quiet. All eyes turned to him. Sterling looked around, soaking up the attention. He thought this was his moment of triumph. He spotted me across the room and pointed a shaking finger at my face. There she is, he shouted. The thief. The imposter. He marched toward me. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. They were terrified of him, but I stood my ground. I folded my arms and waited. Sterling stopped 5 feet away from me. He was breathing hard. He smelled like cheap whiskey and desperation. Get out of my hotel, Elowen, he spat. The game is up. Is it? I asked calmly. I didn't know we were playing a game, Sterling. I thought we were running a business. He waved the papers in the air. This is an injunction, he yelled. My lawyers filed it an hour ago. You obtained my shares through fraud. This sale is frozen. You are trespassing on my property. Security, remove this woman immediately. He looked around for the guards. The same guards who used to do his bidding. The head of security, a massive guy named Tiny, stepped forward. But he didn't look at me. He looked at Sterling. Sir Tiny said, his voice deep and rumbling. You are not on the guest list. You need to leave. Sterling's face turned red. I am the owner, you idiot. Read the papers. I stepped forward. Those papers are worthless, Sterling, I said, my voice carrying through the silent ballroom. Because you are not being sued for losing the company. You are being investigated for stealing from it. Sterling froze. The color drained from his face so fast he looked like a ghost. What are you talking about? He whispered. I pulled a remote from my clutch and clicked it. The massive screens behind the stage, which were displaying the new hotel logo, flickered and changed. Suddenly, spreadsheets and bank records filled the walls. Highlighted in neon yellow were hundreds of transactions. I have had a forensic accounting team going through the books for the last 2 weeks, I said, walking slowly toward him. Do you know what we found? We found shell companies. We found fake invoices. We found millions of dollars of company money funneled into your personal offshore accounts in the Caymans. The crowd gasped. Phones were out. The live stream was running. You weren't just a bad boss, Sterling, I continued relentlessly. You were an embezzler. You were stealing from your own shareholders to pay for your yachts and your parties and your gambling debts. Sterling backed away, shaking his head. That is a lie. Those are fake. Are they? I asked. Because the FBI didn't seem to think so when I handed over the evidence this morning. Sterling's eyes went wide. He looked at the doors. At that exact moment, the double doors at the back of the ballroom burst open. Four federal agents in windbreakers with yellow letters walked in. Sterling Cross, one of the agents, shouted, "Put your hands in the air." Sterling looked at the agents, then back at me. His bravado shattered. He looked like a scared child. "Elowen, please," he begged, his voice cracking. "We can make a deal. I will sign whatever you want. Just don't let them take me." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had thrown a dollar bill at my feet and told me I was trash. I felt no pity. I felt no anger. I just felt nothing. He was irrelevant. "You are right about one thing, Sterling," I said softly so only he could hear. "You are a nobody." The agents grabbed him. He didn't fight. He slumped in their arms as they cuffed him. They dragged him out of the ballroom past the hundreds of people he had looked down on for his entire life. As he was hauled through the doors, silence hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then someone started clapping. I looked over. It was Jenny, the barista. She was standing by the dessert table clapping her hands. Then Marcus started clapping. Then Tiny, the security guard. Then the investors. Then the entire room erupted into applause. It wasn't polite golf claps. It was a roar of approval. It was the sound of a kingdom rejoicing that the tyrant was gone. I stood on the stage and watched them take him away. I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. I walked up to the microphone. The applause died down. "I am sorry about the interruption," I said, my voice steady. "We seem to have taken out the last of the trash." Laughter rippled through the room. "The Obsidian is gone," I said. "That name is tainted. It represents everything that was wrong with this place. The arrogance, the cruelty, the exclusion." I looked out at the faces of the staff. From now on, this hotel is called The Haven. Because that is what it is going to be. A place where everyone is treated with dignity. Whether you are renting the penthouse or scrubbing the floors. Because if I learned one thing working in the trenches with you, it is this. The uniform does not make the person. The character does. I raised my glass. "To the Haven." "To the Haven," the crowd shouted back. The music started again. The party went late into the night. I danced with Marcus. I danced with Jenny. I even danced with Tiny, the security guard, which was like dancing with a gentle grizzly bear. Around 2 in the morning, I stepped out onto the balcony for some fresh air. The city lights were twinkling below me. The noise of the party was a dull thrum behind the glass. I leaned against the railing, feeling the cold metal against my skin. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from the bank. The transfer of Sterling's seized assets had begun. The money he had stolen was being returned to the company accounts. I was going to use it to fund the new scholarship program for the employees' children. I heard the door slide open behind me. I turned around. It was Jenny. She was holding 2 cups of coffee. "I figured you might need this," she said, smiling. "Decaf. Oat milk." "You are a lifesaver," I said, taking the cup. She leaned against the railing next to me, looking out at the skyline. "Feels different," she said. "The hotel. Feels good." "It is good," I said. "Can I ask you something?" Jenny asked, looking at me sideways. "Shoot. Why did you do it? You are a billionaire. You could have just bought the place from your office. Why did you put on the uniform? Why did you scrub the floors?" I took a sip of the coffee. It was warm and comforting. "Because I needed to know," I said. "You can look at spreadsheets all day, Jenny. You can look at profit margins and stock prices. But that doesn't tell you the truth. The truth is in how people treat you when they think you can't do anything for them." I looked at her. "Sterling failed the test," I said. "You passed." Jenny smiled. She clinked her paper cup against mine. "Well, boss," she said. "What is next?" I looked out at the endless grid of Manhattan. There were thousands of buildings out there. Thousands of companies. Thousands of bad bosses thinking they were untouchable. "Next," I said with a dangerous glint in my eye. "We expand." I finished my coffee and tossed the cup in the recycling bin. I adjusted my silver gown. I checked my watch. "Come on, Jenny," I said, turning back toward the party. "The night is young. And we have a lot of work to do." We walked back inside together, leaving the cold night air behind. The glass doors slid shut, sealing out the noise of the city. Inside the haven was warm and bright and full of music. Sterling Cross was sitting in a holding cell downtown waiting for his lawyer to tell him he was screwed. I was dancing with my staff celebrating a new era. The world is full of people who think they are kings because they have a crown. But they forget that crowns can be melted down. They forget that castles can be stormed. And they always forget to check who is holding the keys to the back door. I am Elowen Vance. I used to be a waitress. Now I own the city. And I am just getting started.